Hello and welcome to our next episode of Minerva PLM TV. I'm Jennifer Moore, your host, and today I have with me Lionel Grealou, Director at X Lifecycle, blogger at virtual-digital.com, engineering.com, and momentumplm.com. Leo, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer.
And Leo, you've been in PLM for a really long time. Why don't you share with us a little bit about your background and how you got started in this space?
Sure. So I've started, like many others, in the PDM space. I was actually a CAD engineer, or maybe even a CAE engineer some years ago. So that's how I started with simulations, film element analysis, and then I went on to the PDM space and very quickly moved into the wider PLM scope, covering requirements, compliance, BOM management, digital manufacturing, service, weight, cost, everything that we can relate to the product lifecycle, really. So, and I have been involved in roadmap development and things like that, up to some more IT activities like ERP and MES integrations and so on.
That's excellent. I mean, big depth and breadth there, lots of different people and topics and processes involved, especially whenever you start to get into migration, of course. And I've seen that you've written really everything about PLM. I saw your recent article on the marriage of SAP and Teamcenter. I saw the one that you wrote about low code on Eris. And then actually one of the ones that really caught my attention was your little black book of PLM on engineering.com. Can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration for that piece and why you wrote it?
Sure. Well, I guess we all wish there was such a thing as a black book of PLM, or something to help us and guide us through our different decisions that we have to make as we consider improving product development lifecycle throughout. So how do we look at the scope that we want to cover? How do we, do we have any pragmatic models that we can use to select the right partners, to define how we're going to implement the strategy, and linking to business change, linking to IT, putting all the different parameters that make PLM, if I may say, in context. And PLM as a discipline, I don't mean it as a tool, obviously. So I asked myself, if there was such a thing, what would it be? And everyone started to write COVID lockdown books recently, I've noticed. So I was saying, well, that's not mine, but I thought if I was to write one, let's say, what would it be? And this is how it started. So I looked at how to make it relevant and not just discuss concept or things that are a bit abstract, but give pragmatic advice. And I thought, instead of writing the book itself, I will write about having one. And is it easy to write one, or is it something you can just learn from books? And actually, the conclusion was no, you can't. So everyone has a different perspective. Industries have different flavors, or they mean PLM, if I may say, differently. Even if they do manufacture products, I mean, from discrete to process manufacturing, there's so many differences and similarities. Or from the perspective of process improvement, from making a more significant change to the business. Therefore, it's quite an array of things that needs to be considered. And I guess the idea behind this somehow provocative title was to say that, yeah, it'd be nice if there was a book, and there are a few books out there, but if you read them, they're probably more case study driven, so based on examples, but there's nothing generic that says, or that compares how you should be doing things, or that says, this is how you should be doing things, basically. So that's how the inspiration came in the first place.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. You're right. The books that I've come across on PLM do tend to focus on either the technology or a specific implementation, or maybe some of the process improvements that you should be going through as we become more digital. One of the elements of your piece kind of focuses on stakeholders. And whether you are working directly inside of a company as a project leader, or participating on team, or even coming in from the outside like you and I often do, it's very important to think about how you determine who's going to be involved in the project and how to communicate and all those elements that go along with stakeholder management. But can you talk to me a little bit about just what is the definition of stakeholder management? What are the elements that go into that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, yes, it's a very important topic, maybe not just for PLM, obviously, but when it comes to change and complex change or collaboration or cross-functional change, let's say, people are always at the center of everything, right? So you can, what everyone understands, that people have to make decisions. They are able to influence others and influence decisions. And obviously, the first commandment of stakeholder management is probably communication. It's understanding the other's perspective, the language, and I just don't mean the national language, but the company's languages. Sometimes different languages across departments and across brands, or when companies have merged and evolved through organic and inorganic manner, and then looking at conveying the right messages or aligning to how people want to be communicated to, and it's important in the world of change, in the world of PLM, to understand who are the sponsors, who are the change lead in the organization, who are supporters, detractors of a specific strategy or a view of how to implement the strategy, and then looking at how to learn from that. So it's a collective learning, if I may say. So we learn, if we are a consultant, let's say, we learn how a company operates. And sometimes the company is very successful, but they have inefficiencies, or they want to scale. So understanding from end users to managers and leaders what their objectives are, how they want to change either their function or other functions, or as a whole certain areas of business. Should that be how they integrate with suppliers? Should that be how they scale? So for instance, startups, they will have completely different requirements as they grow and as they move into more operational type of discussions, from very creative, very nimble to more scalable and something that brings them the next step of the value, if I may say, so that they can continue their growth journey.
Mm-hmm. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Many elements of making sure that you're communicating and the project is moving forward and everybody understands why. And in that article, product lifecycle management, obviously big topic, end-to-end process. You just mentioned across different departments and disciplines and whatnot. But you also say that it's important not to try to boil the ocean, right? Like, yes, have that vision, but try to figure out how to scale down and maybe do a proof of concept, validate your ideas, validate any supporting software or processes that you're going to be using in your change process. So how do you decide who from the stakeholders should participate in that early stage end of the project, once you've decided how you're going to test and validate?
So we want to have champions who obviously holding the budget, the budget owners who wants to be involved in the direction, the strategy, and in obviously any changes to those two parameters. But you want as well to have people who are able to influence the change. So people who are understanding the business very well, who have been championing certain functions or certain activities in the past. People who are understanding how departments or functions operate. So it's change lead, key users or end users, and build a community around that scope, and make it grow, make it evolve as the implementations progress, really.
So I heard a couple of things there, making sure that you have somebody from IT that's able to help support your initiative, making sure that you have, obviously, people from the different disciplines of the elements that you're going to be testing that process, especially whenever considering automation is involved, like people that are strong-willed and able to make decisions. And sometimes maybe able to reverse the decision. So, and then of course, including people from different cultures and business units and backgrounds as well. So really taking your project and mapping the people with the experience to be able to support those different elements, more so than just this role or that role as a set standard. Very good. And a couple of times now I've heard you say words like detractors or resistant or do not support the initiative of the change process. Talk to me a little bit about why it's so important to make sure that people that fall into those descriptors are included even early on and maybe part of those test projects. How does that help?
Yeah, well, I think it's very important. So I've never been in a place where everyone agrees with everyone yet, including at home, if I may say. By this, I mean that it's always good to understand the other's perspectives and see why do they resist. Sometimes it can help us, detractors can help us on the program to keep everyone's honest about the expectation. So they may have views or perceptions, and sometimes valid ones, that no one saw before or no one understood, or they're able to relate to past experience or certain elements that no one else is aware of. So it could be strategy, it could be culture, it could be anything really. Sometimes they don't believe in the change as well. So we have to bring them along and understand their perspectives. And obviously, there's more supporters and detractors as well. Obviously, it needs to be a balance that is geared towards the supporting the change. So no one was going to sign off the beginning of a change initiative. But by looking at what's their agenda, their personal agenda, as well as their functional agenda, if I may say, do they want to grow within the organization? Do they want to take ownership of something? Do they see a gap and they have not been heard in the past, and now they have to help someone else to identify the same gap? So so there are lots of or maybe they don't like consultants, certain things you may have heard as well elsewhere. So it's very important to understand that and become, as some sort of a trusted advisor, but not with a bias or with the intention to try to convert them to something different. Or I think I genuinely believe that it's good to have detractors as change leads in your program, as they can help you anticipate problems. And one thing I should say as well is when they agree, or when you go their way and find a compromise, then they can become the best supporters as well. So they are really, really, it's really important to understand how they can influence others in the business and influence as well how you deliver your solutions and your improvements without trying to force it onto anyone really. So that's, in a nutshell, that this is it, right? So they're equally important, and sometimes supporters become detractors later as well. So it's equally important to understand the agendas of everyone who is involved to the point that what's in it for them, what kind of interest do they have, and power do they have in the organization, or influence, so that we can use this collectively to make the change a success.
I think that's all really good advice, and often overlooked is one of the items that you said, which is understand really where they're coming from. Like, why don't they support this? Oftentimes it's exactly what you said, where they feel like they've raised this issue before and were listened to. So, what all of a sudden changed now that this is a priority? So that's all really good advice. And while I know there is no little black book or exact example of how to do these things and how to manage people, do you have any kind of like visual aids or just like tip sheet or something like that to help people as they move forward in managing lots of different personalities and roles?
Yeah, well, I think there are many models in many books, so I probably use some of them. Typical stakeholder mapping. I mean, you will look at power versus interest, on how much level of involvement and what's the satisfaction level, and so on. I mean, there's all kind of models that have been written by very intelligent people that can be used. I think what is important is to use an array of those things and to tailor them to the context, the project, the organization. I mean, it should not be too theoretical, if I may say. As well, it's a bit tricky to put people in boxes, right? People don't really like it. So So, but understanding the different personas of who you're talking to, and including from the business change perspective, and understanding how they may learn, or how they may change, or how they may adapt or adjust to a new process is very important. Therefore, we have to do those kind of mappings, and these things change, so it's not just a one-off. You won't just do that at the beginning of a project and put it into your business case or your charter to start a project. It needs to be dynamic, and change happen as well throughout an organization, independently of the project itself. So understanding how people might change roles, hopefully not because of the project, or sometimes it's positive as well. So maybe a detractor is moving out of the picture, or the detractor becomes an owner, or start to become more involved, or we bring him closer or her closer to the scope that we are trying to make a difference on. So that's very important. And so again, the importance of understanding the people aspect, and not just from project governance and whatever reviews. It's the coffee machine discussions and so on, which are a bit more difficult these days. So when you're sitting on the other side of the screen, so we can have, I have a few after hours, if I may say, drinks or things like that. But it's more difficult, obviously, not having that personal connect face to face, let's say, with people. But that's equally important, I think, when you implement change, because it's difficult to build new relationships and know really how people behave and their posture. We all have a bit of a different attitude, let's say, when you're facing a camera, and rather than looking someone in the eye, which I don't know where your eyes are. It's very difficult to make that personal connect on Skype or Zoom or whatever. Sorry, or Teams, whatever. But it's equally important when we build relationship to take those factors into considerations and be open with the others. So there are many models, but they are aids, as you say rightly. So they are visual aids or aids to shape how we communicate and how we respond to challenges when we are challenged.
Mm-hmm. And I think my number one takeaway from that is the great piece of advice about don't take for granted that it's a static task. You don't just do it once. You continue to refine and reform, and also get help from others that are on the team. So that's really great. And this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share, or words of wisdom?
Well, I would say that, PLM to me is a discipline. So it's not just a tool, if I may say. And it's all about connecting people and functions to the data and the product, the great products that companies make. So I think it's I don't know if that's wisdom or just obvious, but it's probably something that I like to remind myself and others I work with on a daily basis, that we're looking at improving how people work and how people collaborate to make better products and all those marketing jargon. But it's beyond the marketing. I think it's really important to look at how we use the right words when we communicate. I hear a lot about digitalization these days. I try myself to make sense of it, and sometimes you ask the question and you feel like it's there are lots of new buzzwords that emerge from the industry without linking necessarily to the pragmatic implementations and pragmatic solutions that we provide to our customers. So I think it's important to look at it from a holistic perspective as well. The big picture is very important to me, not just IT or business or process, or to look at the data and the people element, all those dimensions that everyone obviously know about are very important to link to deliver the best solution from a PLM standpoint.
Absolutely true. And again, thank you so much, Leo, for being here with me. I've really enjoyed our session.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
And to all of our viewers, as always, if you like this content, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Have a question that you want to see answered on a future episode, make sure to drop your comments below or send me an email at jmo@minerva-plm.com. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great day.